Congressman Ron Paul is here in the studio with us, taking calls from listeners. I've been serving you stuff to your strong suit. Now you're going to hear from the other side of the aisle here, Congressman Paul. Okay. And let's hear from Walter. Good morning, Walter.
Good morning, Ron.
Good
morning. Mr. Paul. Pleasure to speak to both of you.
Yes, sir.
I was calling about foreign policy. Can I drop 3 questions on you, and I'll hang up and let you guys decide how many you want to answer?
Okay. Go
ahead. I'm pretty well versed, and I really love everything Congressman Paul has to say about the economy. I'm at an age where I realize I can't just trust government to figure everything out. So as I'm trying to think through these issues, I don't have a good solution for foreign policy. And as much as I'd like to just have all the boys come home, I'm curious about how Mr. Paul would like to address kind of our situation in the world today and our military in a responsible way. My other 2 questions that were kind of, since Congressman Paul is a historian of note, I'm kind of curious, is there a predecessor of ours that has been a successful world power and kind of gotten drunk and fat on itself and then recovered? Because it sounds like we're trying to go back to an era. Can that happen? And my last question is, I really like the idea of constitutional law, but even our founders seem to think it only worked for a moral or religious people. Can our government still work if we don't have that kind of people?
Great questions, all. Thank you, Walter. I appreciate it.
Yes.
First off, in foreign policy, you would describe it, I think, as non-interventionalism.
Yes, and this is what the founders expect us to do. There's no authority for us to have anything other than a national defense, and no authority to be the policeman in the world, advise us to stay out of entangling alliances. So therefore, we wouldn't be in the UN or NATO, and we wouldn't be occupying countries, and we would not be fighting wars that were undeclared. Only the Congress could declare the wars because they didn't want the king, which became the executive branch, to make those efforts. Besides, we're broke. We can't afford it, and this to me is a good place to cut, bring our troops home, get those troops spending their money here at home, cut back on all the expense. And why should we be subsidizing Japan and South Korea and Germany? We pay for their defense, and that doesn't help us. So it's a non-interventionist foreign policy. A lot of people want to suggest, that means you're an isolationist. Not at all, because I believe in trade, and I think we should be as open as possible with people, trade and be friends. The founders advise trade with people and be friends with those who want to be, and I think we'd all be better off. I think that the next question he asked, I'd like to have an hour to answer all these questions,
yes,
but I know this time. But on recovering,
as a welfare state and an empire, and we are both an empire and a welfare state. Is there ever one that's had a successful dismantling and downsized and willingly on their own steam reformed back to a republic?
To some degree. The British Empire actually did reasonably well. They lost their empire, especially after World War II, and we took it over. So they don't have a British Empire, but they're still a British Empire. There's an England, so to speak, so it exists. But no, when you see countries and empires like the Roman Empire, I don't think there's going to be a Soviet Empire in the near future. So no, they basically don't recover. But that shouldn't be seen as a loss. Let's say we lose our empire, but we have our United States, and we become a giant country with a free trade zone, and that we're a giant Switzerland or something, or a giant Hong Kong. I think it would be delightful that if we were at peace, and had prosperity, and we would influence the world by persuasion rather than with arms of force. So,
but you're not a no-nuke, tree-hugging peacenik, though, right?
Well, I'd love to be. I'd love to be a peacenik in the sense that I want peace. There's no doubt. But I'm not in the sense that you shouldn't have a national defense. I think this is true. But no, I think we could do a lot better if we just took the Constitution seriously and didn't go to war without a declaration.
Well, your biggest critic on these issues would be, of course, Senator Santorum, who you've tangled with several times in debate, and he would suggest that you have an insufficient fear of radical Islam.
Yeah, that's what he says, but maybe I think he has an irrational fear where he's willing to go to war carelessly. He's willing, it sounds to me, my interpretation, he's willing to go to war against Iran. And, you know, that's what we need right now. We're basically in 6 wars right now. He wants to start a 7th when we're broke, and I want to dismantle the empire. And of course, the big argument is exactly why do they want to kill us? You know, and it isn't because we're free and prosperous. That is not the case. Or they would be attacking free and a lot easier targets. They'd go after Switzerland or Sweden or Norway or somebody. They're free and prosperous too. So that isn't that isn't reason. The other question you asked was about the constitutional law, and I believe it was Adams that said that you know, this won't work unless you have a moral people. And I really think that that is the basic problem we have in this country. Although I work in politics and I work in economics, I guess if you deal only with the morality of the people and the understanding of basic ethics and morality, maybe it has to come from our religious leaders or something. But I do not think we are a moral people. And I think we're too anxious to use violence to solve our problems. I think, you know, I don't happen to like abortion. I think abortion is very bad, and you lose all respect for life. And I think the changes in the 60s that I witnessed, it occurred because the people just defied the law. And they had less respect for life. And then the law changed. So I think that makes the point that he's making. If the people's morality changed, the law follows up. It isn't the laws that change and makes us do bad things. It's when we want to change the law and say, well, these things are all okay. We don't have to have a declaration of war. We can go to war any old time, and we ignore it. That means the people have permitted it. The founders didn't like what the king did, and they resented and had a revolution. Today, we are so willing to give up our freedoms and the prerogatives of the Congress, and the people just say, well, you know, if somebody feeds me, if I get my food stamps, or if I get my bailout, I'm okay, and they don't look at it from a moral viewpoint.
You're from Texas. You're from the home stomping grounds of Rick Perry. And he has got into some one of the very first things people asked him when he came to Iowa was his advocacy of a vaccine for kids, for 14-year-olds who were exposed to the HPV virus. Michelle Bachmann has had some mileage against that. You're both a physician and you're from Texas. How do you process, first off, the history of what the governor tried to do down there, and then what it means about his view of government, and whether or not that vaccine was tested enough and was useful enough to be imposed at that level?
You know, I think this is an example that you can deal with both the attitude of how government should be run as well as you know, the wisdom of doing something like mandating HPV
through an executive order.
Right. And I mentioned that in the debates that it was a very bad thing to do, but the fact that it was an executive order compounds our problem. At least the people in Texas rose up and they got their legislature to repeal this. But I even admitted I was surprised that our governor had that much power, because they talk about our governor not being that powerful. But no, I think I'm although a physician and I endorse the principle of inoculations, that are very, very important, but I think our kids now are getting about 12 different things. And there are some, I read a recent article on the HPV inoculations, and there's a lot of questions being raised up exactly how the studies were done and how long it lasts, and they have no idea, you know, what the long-term consequence will be and what the benefits are. And in one way, it might make some people complacent and say, oh, I got that shot and it's going to take care of any possibility of getting cancer of the cervix. And yet, the best thing, as a gynecologist and from scientific research, the best thing that ever happened to prevent the disease of a carcinoma of the cervix are doing Pap smears. And you know, over the years, I treated a lot of people with HPV disease. but I've only during all those years I worked in OBGYN, I only saw one case of carcinoma of the cervix. So I think there was a lot of scare tactics associated with that.
Some people have gone as far as suggest this was an example of crony capitalism and crony the political relationship between Merck and the political class.
It sure raises a lot of questions. That's why letting people and parents make decisions, whether it's medical or education. I would like to see these decisions made by parents for all our educational needs, and yet we're always deferring to the federal government to make these decisions, or our state governments, and I think that's wrong.
We'll continue in the last segment together with Congressman Ron Paul, and he's covered a lot of ground already. We'll get you back involved in the conversation at 284-1040 or 800-469-4295 in a moment.
Through town, huh?
They've come here on a publicity tour. They're trying to get people interested. You might know one of them. Where is it? I'm so terrible with remembering names. One of the fellas ran for. You've got. Jeff Bell,